I'm Frank Davino, born and raised in Waterbury, Connecticut, educated at Quinnipiac College in New Haven, attended Rutgers University, the University of Georgia Tech, Oklahoma University, and Montclair and Rutgers University, and specialized in planning, urban development, then went on to become the Urban Renewal Director, Economic Development Director for the City of Waterbury. I was in office for approximately 32 years. I retired from the city, and about 2 years later, and took on the responsibility of Vice President of Sales and Marketing for carpet manufacturing, which I hold at the present time. Waterbury, in its original incorporation, was really a town that everyone could really be proud of. It was an industrial community, brought in the English, Irish, Italian immigrants. They started many businesses, a lot of manufacturing facilities, Scoville Manufacturing, Chase Brass and Copper, Anaconda American Brass and Copper. Each of those major companies employed anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 employees in 3 shifts at any given year. Certainly during the war years, it was very productive in the 40s, and then moved on in the 50s. Ancillary businesses were created from those major corporations, and that started a whole trend towards medium and small businesses, which grew into larger communities. It was known as the brass center of the world, and obviously through the initiation and invention of newer metals, brass became non-existent in manufacturing, and aluminum, silver, gold, copper became prevalent. Waterbury lost its brass center of the world motto. We were also the home of U.S. Time Corporation, where all the Mickey Mouse watches were made. We were also the home of many other industries that have now since left. Waterbury now basically is medium-size manufacturing. We're a city of about 107,000 people of mixed nationality, also mixed religious persuasion. My relationship actually goes back to the early, I guess the late 1950s, like 1959, and 1960. John Greco was a personal friend. He was the initiator, the creator, the father of Holy Land. He had a dream. That dream was put to his immediate use in terms of creating Jerusalem or Holy Land in the 15, 16 acres that are presently in what was originally known as Pine Hill, right off of Slocum Street, which is visible from the highway, traveling in an easterly direction on Route 84. John became a friend through my mother, who used to participate in a lot of the Catholic charities. She was a dead mother. She went to the Immaculate Conception Church. St. Cecilia's Church is where all my relatives were from, and John was basically from that area. And when he created and started to work on Holy Land, the family, through my mother, started to do whatever we could to help. I was at that time, when I had just come back from Korea, I was at that time the relocation interviewer for the Urban Renewal Agency, in charge of moving people out of their homes before demolition took place. When the demolition took place, John had asked if there were any salvageable materials that he could have to build Holy Land. I would say that a good 35%, maybe 40% or more of all the material up there came from the houses and buildings, factories that we tore down during the course of the urban renewal process in Waterbury. And John became my lawyer when I became director of the Urban Renewal Agency. I worked myself up from the relocation interviewer, which was the lowest job on the totem pole, up to the director of the Urban Renewal Agency. 27 years old, I became the youngest director of in the United States of a major city, and John and I became very close, and whatever I could do in terms of material, money, services, contractors that I knew, I worked to anytime he asked, he received. He was probably the quietest, slight man, very short stature, very unassuming. You could barely at times hear what he was talking about, or if you asked him a question or he was talking to you, he was not forceful at all. He got people to do whatever he wanted them to do, I think by sheer personality. He was incredibly successful in domineering people without the slightest bit of intimidation whatsoever. Probably the nicest person that I've ever met. Holy, religious, charitable, unselfish, gave everything in his life to building this dream of having Holy Land in Waterbury, Connecticut. Every dime, every effort, every ounce of energy he had was totally dedicated to Holy Land in Waterbury, Connecticut. Primarily to God. That was his primary purpose, was to serve God. He was a graduate of Yale University, an immigrant, and a graduate of Yale University as an attorney, which was a tremendous accomplishment in itself. And when he completed Holy Land, it was just phenomenal. Every child in the city and the surrounding areas, every person knew what Holy Land was. There would be estimates of 40, 50, 60,000 people a year that would come by busload up to the Holy Land to view it. John would be there. He would greet them. He worked countless hours keeping everything in order, keeping everything in repair. And he did it all, for God and his religion and for the people of Waterbury. He, whatever you asked him to do, he did. Whatever he could possibly do, he'd go out on the weekends and he would preach the Word of God. He would read from the Bible. He would do anything and everything for people. He truly, to me, was the first real religious person. Although I was an altar boy for some 10 years, 8 to 10 years at the Immaculate Conception Church in Waterbury, he really was a true religious person. He was almost holy. And I honestly believe that Holy Land was given to him as a sort of challenge in his religion to do. And he accepted that challenge and accomplished it. I can't say enough about him. He just, he certainly is in heaven. There's no question at all. I mean, a lot of people say, if there's a heaven, I wonder, well, if there is a heaven, which I believe there is, he certainly flew there quickly. An overview of beginning of what happened and how did Holy Land start. John, first of all, I think really had a vision. That's what I would call it, without question. He had a vision of what he wanted to do there. He envisioned the same thing that happened in Jerusalem and that surrounding area where Holy Land is. And he went and he researched every document that he could get his hands on, traveled back and forth to Israel several times, took photographs of everything he could take photographs of. And in his vision, he really created in his mind, and then, crude drawings, the Holy Land that he wanted to have there, which was basically a duplicate of what was in Jerusalem. He brought on several other people, friends, 3 or 4 that I can remember. There are possibly maybe 5 that they started to sit and to discuss how they would start working this out. They were Italian, they were immigrants, they knew how to work with wood, with stone, with plaster, with concrete. They knew how to makeshift all kinds of materials and blend them together so that they looked great. And that's what they did. He first started to put a sign up, and then from the sign, he started to put the cross. And the cross became the symbol of Holy Land. You knew you were home when you saw the cross from '84. You said, oh, God, thank God I'm home. After a long trip. I can't tell you how many times I said that. How many times other people have said it. People who visit say, oh, yeah, I saw the cross. And from there, it just emerged as a phenomenal reproduction of Holy Land. And he built every single building painstakingly to detail. Every statue, the catacombs, the tomb of Jesus, the sepulcher, everything was mint. It was just a vision that he had that I don't think anybody in Waterbury had then or had now. And he had it. It was given, I believe it was given to him spiritually as a challenge. And he did this as his life's challenge to satisfy the needs of the Spirit of Jesus and the spirituality of what people needed at that time. It closed in approximately 1984 or 87. I can't remember exactly when. The park closed, I believe, in 1987. When John gave the park, the Holy Land, over to the Sisters of the Filippini to preserve the park and to carry on his work, is what the actual document says. He always in his mind thought that it should have been a religious group that would carry on the work that he had started and others had participated and contributed to. Unfortunately, what happened was the sisters did not carry on for whatever reason, whether it be economics or physical work or whatever reason, they did not maintain the Holy Land asset as it was originally given. And as the years went on, from 1987, it just started to totally deteriorate. The weather we have here in Waterbury, you know, rain, sun, thunder, lightning, snow, cold, hot, whatever, just started to really destroy and deteriorate the asset itself, the statues, and so forth. It became really, started to crumble and really became non-existent. You almost really can't tell what was there originally. What does the future hold? Oh my God. Well, in the year 2002, I was named the chairman of the Waterbury Committee for a New Waterbury. I had just finished doing the Arts Festival downtown at Library Park, and the then mayor wanted another project to move Waterbury forward. And I put together a committee of some 35 or 40 people, and we all basically agreed that Holy Land should be the project that we should move forward on. And we should try to assist the sisters that were there in rebuilding the park. And I don't like to call it a park, but rebuilding Holy Land, and then taking it and go beyond that. And instead of one cross, put 3 crosses. Instead of one denomination, have it, you know, as many religions as we could possibly get in there, or who wanted to participate to get in there. So we started this campaign to reconstruct and Holy Land. And the first people that I talked to financially were extremely, very comfortable with what we wanted to do. We presented a 5-year plan to the sisters, and then I went out to the public privately and talked to 1 or 2, excuse me, of my major people. One of my friends, who has since passed away, was an executive of CEO of a major worldwide corporation. And he said that he would do $250,000 a year towards the reconstruction for 5 years of Holy Land. So we were thrilled with that. Then other foundations came into play. All in all, we had about $2 million quickly. So we decided that we couldn't go through the neighborhood. So we found another way to get through Holy Land so that buses and cars could go right from the highway off and right into Holy Land. Now, several other groups, such as the Knights of Columbus, had already, in concert with Holy Land, said they wanted to do something. So we sort of like were talking to individuals who were on those committees to join together so that it would become a citywide venture. We went 4 or 5 years through this. In 2008, we had the decision by the sisters that were running the Holy Land that they would not approve of our plan. So that knocked us off our track. 2 years ago, it started all over again. I personally said, we have to start this. Let me go try again. And just as I started to get back on track again, the sisters, the Order of the Filippini, put Holy Land up for sale, the land. They said that Holy Land, whoever bought it could do whatever they wanted with it. And obviously that, to us, was not the way it was going to go. We were going to maintain John Greco's dream. And he gave that land and the asset of Holy Land to the Order of the Filippini to preserve, maintain, and conduct Holy Land in the form and the asset that originally was. So we were prepared to stop anybody from going in there, putting, for instance, a housing development or a factory or whatever, other than what Holy Land really was. So the nuns then turned around, the order, and then said, well, we're going to sell it. So they put it up for bid. They originally wanted $750,000. Then they went down to $500,000. We offered $175,000. I was prepared to go to $225,000. I had $100,000 already pledged, and our trust, our family trust, was going to put up $50,000, so that gave us a good $150,000 base. Several of my friends who I work with and other individuals and foundations had pledged another $200,000, $300,000. So we had enough money within the first 2 weeks, that I could play with at least $350,000 to $400,000. And then we found out that the shrine, the Mother or Virgin of Revelation, was not in existence ever. We thought it was published that it was. So we thought that we needed to really bring Holy Land back to the way it was by bringing in the students of design schools, architectural schools, pop art schools, such as NYU, Pratt Institute, University of Connecticut, Cornell, some of those schools that have those kinds of programs. So we called several of them. I took them through the property. They were thrilled. They were dying to get in there to reconstruct everything and make it even better with materials that would last, and how to prevent further or any more deterioration after we rebuilt it. The next thing we knew is that as my initial offers were made, the mayor of the city of Waterbury and a good friend of his, I believe his best friend, turned around and they put a bid in that was far superior than ours. They put a bid in for $375,000 versus our bid. Their bid was accepted and took us right out of the picture, and they are going to, I believe, clean the park up or the Holy Land up and put a larger cross than is already there. The newspaper articles that I've read and everything that has been told to me states that they are not going to go to the extent that our group was going to go to, and that was to redo Holy Land from the beginning of what it was, and then carry it on further. We had a picnic area in the back for buses, and would park at a new entrance coming in. People could picnic there. They could have food. We had shelters for the abused and battered children. We had all denominations in what we call the circle of faith that was all around the cross, all the way on top of the hill. We had a Easter, Christmas, masses that would go on. We had mass there. We wanted every Sunday, the Rosary, Stations of the Cross, an entire barrage of religious instructions for all and everyone who wanted. We had several orders of religious people calling, saying they would participate. But now, since the mayor and his friend have taken it over and have been accepted, my feelings are simply, I don't care who does anything with it other than if it's preserved as Holy Land, that's fine. To the extent of what they do is the difference that I have. And to me, that's maybe not important. The important thing is that someone has done something. They're going to put in a cross, clean it up, and any religious group that wants to go in there will go in, and they will put their own shrine in, and it'll be non-denominational, and they can worship there. So I think Holy Land is saved in its budding context of originally when John Greco started. The cross went up and then everything else followed. Will everything else follow? I don't know. One thing I do know is that Holy Land in Waterbury is not a theme park. It is not a Bible park. It is not someplace where people would go to see items that were built there in terms of attracting people for the lure of money. I think that's, theme park mentality. From the very beginning, I really saw what John Greco was doing. And I mean, you could really see the labor and the effort and the challenge that he put into this. And it was the fact that he built Holy Land in Waterbury as a place for people to worship. I remember some of the things that he would talk about. He would talk about people going to a place that was holy, people coming here to pray because they needed to pray, and people coming here to feel good about themselves, and families coming there to observe, the entire ambiance of Holy Land in its context. I mean, you had the feeling when you walked through there that you were in a different world, that you were not in Waterbury, Connecticut. The sense of the physical items there almost betrayed what you felt because something overtook you. I remember going there and just feeling like a sense of spirituality. Something, as you walked through there, just gave you a feeling that you didn't have when you went to Lake Quassapag or Lake Compounds, or you went through a museum that had religious items in it. You felt that you were really in a place of worship, a holy place. And that feeling transcended, I think, John's vision of what he really wanted to have transposed on that land. and it wasn't a theme park. I know that other parks are successful in terms of money. I know they're successful in terms of bringing people into the park economically, but that wasn't John's plan. I think his plan was, as I said, a spiritual challenge, from God, if you believe that, and I do, to put a place here in Waterbury that people would feel really they belonged there to go to. That was their special place. And I know a lot of people, including members of my family, when we had a lot of difficulty in our family is immigrant Italian families. My grandfather, my mother, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, all came from Italy. And when it was difficult, Sunday we would go there. They would go there. And I was old enough that I could drive and working in urban renewal, and my mother would say, come on, we're going there. Going to Holy Land. And I would say, Ma, come on, we're going. And we would go. And then we would go to Hamilton Park, or we would go to the beach, wherever we went, but we stopped there. And this is after going to church. So you kind of felt it was a home almost away from home, a place that people, and no matter who you talk to in Waterbury, they know Holy Land, but not as a theme park. John didn't build it for that. He built it for the Spirit of God and the creation of a vision that he had for people to have a holy place to go. And that I firmly believe in. And that's why I was so intent, as was the people on my committee, I should say our committee. That's why we wanted to rebuild it. That's why we wanted to rebuild it. The importance of this site to me is that I firmly believe that Holy Land is sacred. I believe in my heart and my mind and my body that Holy Land is sacred ground. The words itself, it's Holy Land. It's not, Pine Hill Park. It's Holy Land. And John, the saint that he was, and those people who helped him build it, firmly believed that also. They spent their whole life preaching the Word of God, because they believed it, and building Holy Land. So to me, we, the people of Waterbury, and the sisters of the Filippini, and anybody else who is going to become involved in Holy Land, need to respect that. And I commend the mayor, and I commend his friend, and the committee that he's putting together, and everybody who's going to contribute money to purchase Holy Land and to bring it to some semblance of what it originally was, because they're keeping the sense of principle, and that is they're keeping it as a holy ground. It's not going to be turned over into anything else but sacred ground, Holy Land. They are not going to build apartments on it. They've already formed a nonprofit organization. I believe it's called Holy Land Waterbury, Connecticut. And it's going to be perpetuated in terms of the covenants that are put in there, that it will stay as Holy Land. It will not change its use, and I think that is extremely commendable and very, as a matter of fact, very comforting to myself and a lot of other people who have been involved, way back in the early 1960s. I mean, we're talking about a long time here. I'm not talking about 3 or 4 years or last year. I'm talking about, a span of time. And when you're into that situation, you have to believe that you're doing something special. You need to believe that you're doing something extraordinary. This is not building a building. I've built hundreds of buildings in the city of Waterbury. As urban renewal director and economic development director, I put $400 million in buildings and into public works programs. And those were simple. Those were easy to do. I had great mayor, Mayor Bergen, who worked with me, gave me my head and said, do it. And he backed me all the way. I had a great board. I had a great board of aldermen. But this is Holy Land. And when you think about it, you wonder, when you take on this project, are you going to do it the right way? Are you going to do it the way John Greco and his fellow apostles, I call them? John was John Baptist Greco. That's how religious this man's family was, and he. And I wondered how he would think now. And I always said, if this goes forward, and our committee, and I used to tell the committee members, I say, listen, I've done a lot of things in Waterbury to build them, and I like to fancy myself to think that I did build a tremendous amount of buildings in Waterbury, but when it came to Holy Land, I built that without second thought. But when it comes to Holy Land and it comes to spirituality, religion, God, there's a mystique about it that I don't think anybody understands. And if they understand it, then they're far above the rest of us. Politics, ego, money, everything goes out the window. This is not anything about those things. It's not about accomplishment, and it's not about beating the next guy or doing the project better than somebody else. It's about Holy Land. And when you think about Holy Land, and you think about John Greco, and you think about what he did and what his people did with him, and you think about what challenges he had to go through and the sacrifice of his entire life, almost in poverty, as a lawyer, giving all of his money, all of his effort, and all of his time for Holy Land, you had better be absolutely convinced that what you're going to do and what we're going to do as a city to help Holy Land is absolutely right. And anybody who laughs at that or laughs at what John Greco did doesn't even understand what this world is all about. Because it's senseless to think, to me, that all of those ego things and the money and the politics and the position and the power, that to me is a video game. And the real issues here are God, family, and that's what this land to me is all about. You can bring this community together easily through Holy Land. You can't bring it together through a shopping mall or a factory or a new street. I built hundreds of them. It comes together for a short while, but but it moves off. Holy Land brought people together, and it can do it again. And that's what it means to me. Yes, there was a murder on the site. It was a very unfortunate situation. It was not the norm. It was not something that happened all the time. It was two teenagers, unfortunately drinking and probably some drugs, and involvement with some kind of physical connection, and unfortunately a young teenage girl was murdered. The property was open. It's sort of hidden, and it was right on the cross, on the footsteps of the cross, where she had passed away, and then was dragged off into the woods. And it's a tragedy. I mean, it's an absolute tragedy. The irony of that is I was interviewed by Stephen Colbert, national television, and he kept prodding me all through the interview. He kept saying, but isn't there blood? Isn't there conflict? Where's the blood coming from? In Jerusalem, you know, I understood what he was getting at. And I kept saying, there isn't any, there isn't any. And ironically, 7 years, 8 years later, there's blood that's shed on the property. That's why I'm thankful and hopeful that the mayor stepped forward, you know, and approached with his friend and approached the sisters, and they are now going to purchase it because somebody had to. We were there, he was there, and they were there, and it's done. And hopefully it'll never ever happen again. I don't know what else to say about it. God forgive the person who did it, and I hope he's taken that little girl quickly into his arms, and she's never to be forgotten. Never, ever to be forgotten. You might even say that there should be some semblance of a remembrance for her, you know, up in that park or Holy Land somewhere, and as a prayer to her or to God to take her and make sure she's at peace, because she did go through a terrible, terrible ordeal. Terrible. When the park was open, it was free admission. You could donate whatever you wanted. And that was the beauty of it. It wasn't like I said before, whereas a theme park you have to pay admission. This was not. It was a whole different thing. This was strictly John's money, and it was run by him, maintained by him and his friends. Whatever money was given from the people of Waterbury to John. I mean, you knew when you gave, you know, him money, it was going to Holy Land. You didn't have to, you know, go watch it or see where it went or check it out or investigate it. You knew where it was going. That's why everybody gave freely. That's why everybody gave freely. I mean, we were, you know, we didn't have a lot of money. None of us were making a lot of money at that time, but we did. We gave whatever we could give. And I know my mother did, and my aunts, uncles, all of them did, and other families in Waterbury, and the Irish, and the Lithuanians, the Italians, you know, the blacks, everybody gave because of John, And that's what this whole thing was all about. It wasn't about money. It was about keeping this going for families to participate. And you would actually see car after car after car and busload after busload go up there. And they would park all the way down the street and walk all the way up that hill. It was a long hill. And they would walk up that hill. And they would go there and they would kneel down. And you could see them crying and praying and holding each other. You knew that some of those families were in trouble. But that's where they went. And John asked nothing. He didn't say to them, you came here. Now, he didn't do that. He wasn't like that. I truly believe he was another, apostle. I mean, I truly believe he probably was recreated somewhere, some way, from one of the apostles and came back. Because I don't know anybody that I've ever met that had the holiness and the work ethic and the simplicity, but yet had this magnetism, this great force that he could just draw you in, and you became part and parcel of Holy Land. I mean, I had to see the roughest union guys that we used to work with and the toughest construction guys. He'd walk up to them, little guy, shirt and jacket and a tie, white shirt, and he'd introduce himself, and they'd say, you're the guy from Holy Land. Done. Whatever he wanted. It was sort of magical, but it was like a little miracle. I used to call it little miracles. Little things used to happen. I used to go, I can't get these guys unless I fight with them, to move left to right. He goes in there and gets them to bring trucks and everything else up there. It's amazing. It was amazing. What happened was, as a tourist attraction, when John finished the park, it still was called Holy Land, USA. And it wasn't a theme park, but word of mouth, and we didn't have computers at that time or any of the technology that we have now, where you could filter these pictures out on, any one of the images and outreach programs that we have now in technology. This is all word of mouth. All of a sudden, a bus from New York City came up, and then another 2 buses from Rochester, and a bus from New Jersey, and 2 buses from Boston, St. Mary Magdalene's in Boston, and then the 2 buses or 3 buses from St. James down in Newark, New Jersey. And that started to happen. It started to a point where it got to almost 40, 50,000 people a year. Well, it was closed during the winter. So, we're only talking about 6 months, 7 months out of the year. So you're talking about, 5, 6, 7,000 people a month, which was mind-boggling. I mean, this was by bus and car. So you didn't count the people who came from Waterbury who were always there. They basically started counting the outside people who would request, or say that they were coming. And this became a tourist attraction. Now, that says something to me And I think anybody who has any intelligence, that if you get 40,000 people a year to come to Holy Land, they're not coming there to look at a cross. They're not coming there to slide down the catacombs. They're coming there because they want to be part of a religious event. And that is really the key to what happened. And it was wonderful to see those people come in and hear the comments when they walked out. It was just incredible. And John would be thrilled. I mean, he was the happiest you could ever have any human being. And he would always be in the background, but he could always hear what they had to say. And there would always be nuns and priests there, and because they would accompany the buses. And those little kids get off those buses. It was amazing. And that's what we don't have today. We don't have anything for the young people today. They don't have any place to go in terms of what's bothering them. There's so much suicide. There's so much dope usage. There's so much absenteeism from school, and there's so much, aggravated assault against any kind of control or authority. It's just an upheaval. And I believe that the religious base has dissipated. And we need places and like Holy Land. We need that base so that people can feel that sense of spirituality again. And let's hope it gets there. The only background that I can give you on the shrine that was there, or supposedly was there, is that ever since I can remember, everything that I have in my files, everything that was in any file that I ever saw on Holy Land talked about the Virgin of Reconciliation. It was a story that began in Italy, where a father became a very bad person and was about to kill his wife, did commit some murders, and the Virgin of Revelation, or Reconciliation, appeared before him, and he was cured and became religious, and then made this virgin appearance worldwide. The Pope at that time then turned around and put three shrines in existence. One in Australia, one stayed in Rome, and the other one supposedly came to Holy Land. All the documents, and there's photographs galore of the Virgin. And everything said, to see the Virgin, come to Holy Land. So naturally, when you walked into the chapel area or the building where the actual church was, you looked for the Virgin. And you looked at its statue and said, oh, that must be the Virgin. And then, in the course of my getting to purchase the property, I had put in as a condition of purchase that the shrine must stay at Holy Land. And the return back to us was that there is no virgin, and there was a virgin, which was a major shock to all of us. It was like a major blow to me, because I said, this is really sanctuary, because it's where the shrine is. And there wasn't any shrine. So I just reinforced everybody and said to them, there's only one thing to do, and that is to take Holy Land as it was, make it better than it was. If that's possible, we need to get all of the faiths in here, give it a circle of life and faith, so that religion permeates that ground again. And then we need, after it's successfully done and rebuilt, and everybody is involved in it, and we need now to get to the Archbishop and the Pope, and we need to get a shrine instituted in Holy Land. And that was our real motivation. That was our working motivation, was to do that. And that's what we were going to do. That's exactly what we were going to do. So for all intents and purposes, there is no shrine. Never was, and we all believe there was. So that was kind of a shock. Yeah, the building materials that were used in Holy Land. A great portion of the material was used material, recycled material. I mean, we call it recycling now. John was recycling, you know, way back in the early 60s and late 50s. All the material, if we had a building where there was solid timbers, we had good hardwood flooring, we had some plumbing materials such as bathrooms, commodes or bathtubs, anything, you know, roofing material that was left over that was usable. Again, copper wiring, anything, piping. We would take those out instead of demolishing, and we'd be working with the demolition guy, the contractor, and they would be extracted. And we would get people to go down there. If there was, like, say, a whole area with hardwood floors, we would do that. Or there were good windows, we'd take the windows out. We would take anything that we could use, that he could use. He had some crazy requests. I mean, he wanted wire mesh and all these different things. We couldn't figure out what he was doing, but he was making the figures, and they were plastering, and that's what he did. Anything he wanted, so the craziest request, we would just give him. We would say, okay, we'll get the contractor, and I would call the contractor and tell the contractor who they were for, and he would say, Frankie, no problem. You know, I'll take care of it. I'll take the time and I'll deliver it, and he would do that. And then we would ask the guys to anything they could do to help him. You know, I remember one time there was some tons of dirt that he needed for some area where we were digging out all these foundations, and we brought everything up there by truck, and we laid it out the way he wanted. So he really used every effort and every connection that he could possibly use. Remember, this is back in 1957, 56, 57, 58, 59, 1960. This is major accomplishment. This is an entire reproduction of Jerusalem's tiniest house. He did it. So it took money, time, effort, talent, sacrifice, cooperation, and he just put it together. So then, you know, back then, in the late 59s and early 60s, you know, we're not talking about now where money and materials are available. We're talking about building a mammoth project, putting Holy Land in and replicating Jerusalem down to the tiniest house. You know, this is statues and arches and catacombs and crosses and tombs and walkways, everything. He took that material and used every bit of it. None of it went to waste. And when you think about that, you know, nobody went up there and gave him 100,000 or 200,000 like today. This was $1, $2, $5. It was his money. And that's what it was. And he used every effort that he had, every energy in his body. Everybody else who helped him did the same thing. And they just sacrificed their entire life to do this. So why wouldn't we do that? Why would we have not done that? So part of Waterbury wasn't thrown away or burned. It's there, up at Holy Land. And that's, again, why we should really, really think clearly on what we're doing. And that's why we were going to take Holy Land and rebuild it. I think before it wasn't a curiosity. I think before it was a necessity for people to go to. I think it was a need that people had to become part of God, become part of religion. Not all Catholics went. There were other religions. I know for sure other religions went there. I just think they felt when they hear Holy Land, they have a need to satisfy the urge of religion and the urge to feel the part of God that they need and feel is necessary for them to participate in their daily life. The curiosity part about it now is they go up to see how badly it's deteriorated. I mean, if you go on the Holy Land blog, you'll see people who say, you know, I went up there when I was a child, and I went up there now to look at it, and it's a sin that happened that way. I cannot fathom in my mind how the religious order let that property of Holy Land asset deteriorate when everybody wanted to help. From the Knights of Columbus to Frank Davino to the Committee for a New Waterbury. I can't fathom how for 10, 12, 15 years we offered our assistance, our money. And there was another group, a private group, that offered the same thing. And it was never accepted. And I don't understand why. You're from the religious group, you need to know. And you need to know what your responsibility was. And I am not in any way, shape, or form putting the order down. I'm just saying that it should never have happened. Should never, ever have happened. So curiosity, I think, is a word that you can use now because of what's happened there. You know, even the extent of the murder. I know some people who have gone up there to photograph where it happened. And I mean, on the blog, you could see people saying, oh, it's a ghostly area. You know, they go there at night. So that's curiosity. But in the beginning of Holy Land, it was sincerely and unadulteratedly a total necessity. People would drive for hours to go there because they needed to. And people need to today. Where would I take Holy Land if I were given complete control of taking it wherever I wanted to take it? I would not, first of all, I think, I'm sure that it would not be where I wanted to take it. I would not want to take it any place that I wanted. I would only want to take it where John Greco already had taken it. I would think that it would be my responsibility and any committee that I had been involved with, and I headed as chairman of that committee, that we, as a collective committee, would want to make sure that we brought it back to where John Greco had it originally. And then from that point, make it better in terms of its maintenance, its preservation, its lack of deterioration, and its longevity. So, as I said at the beginning, Frank Davino isn't, I'm not a dot on Holy Land, and neither is anybody else. What we are as people are only pawns in the structure of Holy Land to preserve it. It's not what we want, not what I want, it's what John Greco and his Christian soldiers, the apostles as they call them, the Sunday apostles, it's what they created as a vision in Holy Land. And I believe that vision came from other than themselves. There's no other way they could have done it. There's no other way. And I know people that are involved, talking about Holy Land that never have been there when it was in its glory, when it was a budding asset. So they have no idea what they're talking about. And if they saw what was there and they felt that compelling urge to get on their knees and make the sign of the cross and pray, then they would really understand that Holy Land needs to be considered as sacred ground, and it needs to be brought back to where John Greco had it and where it should be. And that, to me, is where it's at. Yes, there's no question in my mind that if you bring it back to its full asset as it was, it'll be a major economic boon to the city because it's in the corridor of the central business district. And if they tie that in with the Magnet School, St. Mary's Hospital, the University of Connecticut, and the Palace Theater and Sacred Heart High School, that corridor is just an abundance of economic stability then. And it brings in tons of people. I mean, imagine bringing 5,000 new people a month into the city of Waterbury, in the downtown area that's so desperately needed now. It would be the start of economic revitalization for certainly a part of the central business district. And if you tie every one of the other anchors to it, yes, it's great for the city, but that's not what it's all about. That to me is secondary in nature. So I would only be, if it were up to me and I could control it, I would only pray that I could be half the man that John Greco was, and the committee and I could finish what he originally did and bring it back to some semblance of what it was. And that's from the bottom of my heart. My mother's relationship to Holy Land is really what was the impetus to bring me closer to Holy Land than I ever was. And my mom was an extremely religious person. She was my best friend. She was everything in my life, as was my dad. I was the firstborn grandson in the family. As the firstborn, I was raised by my grandmother and grandfather, who were very, very religious. My grandmother's name is Immaculata, which is from the Immaculate Virgin Mary. So you could see that we are a religious family. And my mother, being extremely religious, always participated. From the time I was born, she started as a Cub Scout mother and as a Boy Scout mother, and she worked out of the Immaculate Conception Church. And I remember the first mayor that she ever worked with was Mayor Edward D. Bergen, Sr., who was the first Bergen mayor of the city of Waterbury. His son was mayor afterwards. I served in urban renewal under both of them. Mayor Bergen was basically my mentor, the older Mayor Bergen. He was incredible as a mayor. And he and my mother would wash the dishes down at the CYOs and at the Boy Scout meetings and so forth. So my mother then got introduced to John Greco, and then she would go to church up there on Thursdays, and she would then talk to the nuns. And talking to the nuns and all, she became involved in talking to other people to help the church. She would ask for them to send a couple of dollars into John to help with the expenses of Holy Land. And then all of a sudden, he must have said to her, I could see it, Mrs. Davino, could you talk to Francis about any material that he might be able to give me, for use up at Holy Land? And then she came to me, and we were at supper table, and she said, Francis, what do you do with all that material that you take all those buildings down? Like the plumbing material and sinks and, doors, windows. And I said, Mom, we just, if they're not good, they're thrown away and they're, put it to scrap. And, if they're good, the contractor takes them and he sells them. And she said, could you get some of those for Mr. Greco, up at Holy Land? And I said, yeah, sure. I said, I'll have him call me. No, you call him, or you go see him. That's what I did. I'll never forget it. I walked over to his office. My office was on Grand Street at that time. And I walked around the corner to Leavenworth Street and up on the second floor where Attorney DeChico was. And he was with Attorney DeChico at that time. They were discussing something, I don't remember. And I introduced myself, and I was hooked. I walked out of there 10 minutes later, scratching my head saying, what? And he got whatever he wanted. And then I went up to Holy Land, more than I ever have gone, and it was just incredible. I remember I went there before I left for Korea. There was almost nothing, just a few things. And then when I came back, it was like unbelievable. And then he opened, I believe, in late 58, early 59. And it was just fantastic. And then after that, everything just poured in. as it get bigger and bigger and bigger, is where all the materials. I gave him as much as he could handle. And we just kept pouring it on him. And he kept taking it. And he would build one building, then another building, then another building. Every time you could get carpenters or wherever, he would get them. And that was how we did it. That was exactly how it happened. And I would call other urban renewal agencies. I remember calling New Britain, and I remember calling down to Hartford and asking my fellow urban renewal people down there if they had anything that they can contribute. Some did, some did not. You know, they had their own people that they were doing, and some of the contractors said no, but we took care of it. We took care of it. John Greco's life before Holy Land and where he finally decided to do Holy Land itself as it became a reality is sort of a mystery. John would go out with, he called them his crusaders, you know, soldiers for Christ. I called them the apostles. And he would go every Sunday and he would preach. He would bring the Bible and he would talk the Bible to people. He was an attorney. He worked in the city of Waterbury. He worked on Leavenworth Street, as I remember it, on the second floor with attorney DeChico. Jim Hennebree finally went into that office with Attorney McGrath after they retired. And John would walk the streets of Waterbury, and you would hear conversation with him. He never talked about politics. He never had a bad word. He never had a bad word about anyone. He would always talk about, you know, God. He would always talk about making sure things happened right. You know, if you had an argument with somebody, you know, or they would read in the paper, I would have like a newspaper article. He would say, Frank, you know, you got to be careful. Don't say that. You're only going to make other people angry. You know, try to find something good in people. He was that kind of a gentleman. He never married, and he dedicated himself, as I said, to work in the beginning, and then from work he decided he got infatuated, I believe, with Jerusalem. And how he did that, to me, is a mystery. I mean, that just doesn't happen. I mean, it doesn't happen. I mean, why doesn't it happen to other people? All of a sudden, he must have been talking to his group of friends and, you know, the crusaders, the Christian crusaders, and he must have said, let's build Jerusalem. You know, instead of us going out, let them come to the Holy Land. So do I take that to mean that was some kind of a spiritual inspiration? Yeah, I mean, that happens. I mean, that truly happens. It's not like you're a baseball player or a football player, you know, that, you know, you have the talent to be in the NFL or the major leagues. It's not like that. You know, it's not like my profession, you know, building buildings, you know, building a city. And it's not like anything else that I know of. You're not a used car salesman or a new car salesman. You're not the mayor or the governor or the president of a country. You are a messenger. You are, to me, he was like the messenger, the man who carried the message to build Holy Land. Why else would it happen? I have no other answer for that. He never said, I just thought of this and I went and spent my money for this. The property looks like Jerusalem. It looks like the mountain. It looks like Calvary. Nobody envisioned that. What is there? He's been here forever. And he, I think, was inspired. I think he was, I don't know, I call it a little miracle. I mean, that's what I call it. Because everything on that piece of property encompasses religion, Christianity, God, goodness. Nothing there. Nothing there is bad. You know, I just really honestly feel that he had a calling. You know, he could have become a priest easily. But he went to Yale and became a lawyer. I mean, he sometimes ever got paid for cases that he took on. And he could legislate those or litigate those easily. Brilliant man. Not in any way stupid whatsoever. He could litigate in a heartbeat, but he wouldn't do that. I had 2 or 3 cases with him before I hired him through my board to be one of our closing attorneys. And I remember him coming into my office and saying that Mrs. So-and-so had a problem with the relocation. He didn't think that she had gotten enough money for her and her family to be moved out. And he didn't say to me like the other attorneys, if I have to take it to court, I'm going to take it to court. But he would say, Frank, could you please review it again? You know, it looks like she should have got $750 instead of $650 or $450. And I would look at it, and it did make sense, and I would say, okay, John, we can do that. And that's the kind of thing that he did. And that was on a small basis. I remember some of the attorneys in town saying, he drives me crazy. Never talks about the law, always talks about what to do that's right. So his whole life prior to Holy Land was good and holy. He was an amazing individual. Amazing. Well, I have an idea for a film, and the film is religious in nature. And did Holy Land give me the inspiration for the film? I think that it did in nature, in some part. I think that my being an altar boy started me off in that direction, but not knowing what it was all about. But then as I got older and things happened in my life, in Korea and coming back, and then the good things that happened in my life, becoming director of urban renewal and economic development in Waterbury, my hometown, having my mother and father, with me for so long, getting involved in Holy Land, and never forgetting John Greco. Those things, I don't think ever get out of your head. So all of these things that are happening, and I just sort of, in my mind, wondered how that happens, how all those good things happen to any individual such as myself, and that we come out of them whole. So I think the movie or the play or the documentary or the thought that still stays with me is I'm not sure how everything plays in life. I would love to know. I really think that people, if you get closer to God and you go to church and you literally pray, there's some answers you're going to get, but I think that, for instance, my Aunt Edith, our family, again, religious-wise, she travels the entire world to Majorca and all Israel, all over. And there's a group that she belongs to. She knows about Holy Land. She's been there 100 times. She travels the world. She's 87 years old. And she gets on an airplane with her religious group, and they fly to Fatima to participate in the reappearance of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And if you talk to her, she will tell you that the Blessed Virgin Mary came again to Fatima. And you'll never talk her out of it. So I say to her, but what did she say? Did she say anything? And none of the girls that were there could say that she said anything or not. So my curiosity just drives me crazy to answer the questions, why do people have to suffer? Why is it that we have famine in this world? Why is it that people in Africa get slaughtered because they're from a different tribe than other people? And why the little girls have to be slaughtered in China? And why do our parents die before we really get to know them? Or why do our brothers die? Why is there suffering? Why is there anything to do with the way it is? And maybe it's because, Adam and Eve, and we have to suffer for the sins. But I think I want to know. I think everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know why. Is there a life after? Is there heaven? Is there hell? Is there purgatory? Is there Jesus? Is there God? Is there the Blessed Virgin Mary? Is there the Holy Trinity? Was there really Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Did Thomas really walk on water? Did Jesus do the wine and the fish? I want to know that. I believe in it, and they say belief is enough, but I think that everything that I've seen in my life, everything that I know in my life now, from when I was a little boy, I think my curiosity is to a point where if God is all good, then there should be no bad. And if God is all knowing, then we should know. And that's really what I believe, and that's really what I would love to do in some context with the movie, and I hope I didn't give it away. But that's what it's all about. How do I explain Holy Land in under a minute? I would say that Holy Land was conceived, envisioned, and inspired by God to a man named John Greco, who built a sacred ground in Waterbury, Connecticut, where people could go and feel safe, secure, and feel with God. And that place is Holy Land in Waterbury, Connecticut.